I apologize that the first video got interrupted, and this is a part 2, and this first video you're going to see from me is a long-winded one, but this is a critical piece of information I think you need to know, since the primary assignments you're working on for this class are literary analysis essay papers. So, to continue where I left off, I was talking about PIE, which is point, illustration, explanation, which is a strategy that you can use when writing your body paragraphs for a literary analysis paper. You might have heard this acronym before or used it in another course. I know that several of my fellow instructors here teach it, but it is a way to structure a course ensuring that you have all the components that you need. When you start to use textual evidence, and you do need to use textual evidence from the text that you read and that you analyze, you can do them in a couple ways, and that includes summary, paraphrasing, and quoting. When you are summarizing something, you are basically taking the whole of it and condensing it down to just the bare bones so that we have some kind of idea of what happened. So the boys find the grinding ball, but later attempt to bury it. Burying it is their futile attempt to make time stand still and to preserve perfection. So here you have an example of this is the summary of what happened in the story, and then the next sentence is the analysis of what that action meant. When you paraphrase something, you are taking a specific quote from the text and specific words written in the text and trying to put them in your own words. So you are retaining the original message. You're not putting quotation marks around it, but you are still giving credit to the author. So here's an example. I was 12 and in junior high, and something happened that we didn't have a name for, but it was nonetheless like a lion, roaring, roaring, that way the biggest things do. That's the original quote. To paraphrase it, early in the story, the narrator tells us that when he turned 12 and started junior high, life changed in a significant way, and that he and his friends couldn't identify. So, same original intent, you as the author's own words, giving credit to the original author. You can obviously also use direct quotes, and especially when you're doing an analysis of something like a poem, direct quotes are critical because you want to take the precise language from the poem or the short story and use it to justify your thesis. So here's an example of how you would do that. Remember, you are putting the author of the piece you're analyzing, his or her last name, in the parentheses, and then you are giving us the page number on which you found the quote or the passage. Note that if you are citing poetry, rather than citing page numbers, you cite line numbers. So the line numbers usually are numbered on the right-hand side in tiny little numbers. More examples of how to incorporate quotes, and I will put this PowerPoint on Blackboard so that you can peruse it at your own leisure, but I wanted to just quickly walk through what some of these look like and deal with. So you have your HATMET intro, you have your couple of body paragraphs that give evidence from the text to help prove your thesis. Then you are going to write your conclusion. You restate your thesis in some way, restate your main points, leave us with some kind of closing thought, let us know that we've come to the end, and again, this is not the place where you add new information. Everything that's new that you want to argue should be within the intro body of your paper, not in your conclusion. And then finally, write your title. I don't want to see Literary Analysis Essay 1 as your title. Make it interesting, make it attention-getting. It's the first thing that I read, it's the first thing that a reader reads, and it should reveal the piece that you're writing about, and it should in some way reveal the argument that you are making. So I like plays on words, I like alliteration, I like interesting titles. Oftentimes when I'm grading piles of essays at a time, and I look through the titles, and I try to evaluate what is interesting, just like if I go to the library and look at books. So some examples, oftentimes titles in literary analyses will have a colon because they will introduce the work and then have the stance on it. Those are just some examples for you to peruse. And then lastly, knowing who your audience is, remembering that you are writing a literary analysis, and by nature it is a bit more formal. So I want you to, even though you are giving your analysis, these are your thoughts and feelings and ideas, when you are analyzing the components of the piece of literature, I want you to remove yourself from the essay, which means no I, me, my, we, our. Get rid of the first person pronouns. It also means you do not directly address the reader. So no you, no your. Keep it formal, distant, he, she, they, them. And when you reference the authors, use the author's last names after you've introduced them the first time. So Kate Chopin, in her short story, The Storm, she writes blah, 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 blah. And then when I get to my body section, Chopin includes references to bad weather when things like that. Don't refer to her as Kate. We don't know her. We're not on a first name basis with her. And that is not how other people reference writers. They reference them by their last names. You also want to write in the present tense. So when you are reading a story, even though it's happened in the past and it's probably been around for many, many years, if not centuries, you are writing as though the piece lives. And so you write using present tense verbs. So as I have here, Alexi writes, Hemingway shows, Chopin indicates. Use present tense verbs. For short stories, you put quotation marks around them. You also put quotation marks around titles of poems. When you are referencing a novel, you italicize that. And so, again, you don't have to give a lot of plot summary because we have all read the same pieces together. And so you are analyzing rather than summarizing. You will have a works cited page, which will include the piece that you're analyzing. If you do any other research, which I'm not encouraging you to, but if you do any other research or start your paper with a quote, you will need to put that in your works cited as well. Here's an example of one. So I'm going to, again, put this on Blackboard for you to see and for you to use. I hope that you will find this set of videos helpful. And if you have any questions between now and the first draft or the final draft, let me know. Email is the easiest way to reach me. And sorry for the tardiness of introducing myself via video. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.